Welcome to the debate. Imagine standing at the crease. You have just watched your opening partner, who was, by the way, absolutely dominating the game, get caught out on the boundary.
Yeah, and the bowler is suddenly fired up.
Exactly. The fielding team is swarming all over you, and the textbook, the century-old manual of cricket, it screams at you to just block the next ball, to survive and consolidate.
Right, because that is what we were always taught.
But instead, you step out of your crease and smash your very first delivery for a boundary. You risk the entire match on a single aggressive swing. Is that the pinnacle of modern cricket evolution, or just a masterclass in reckless stupidity?
It is the single most important question a young player can ask themselves today, especially when you look at how rapidly limited overs cricket is mutating.
Spot on. Today, we are analyzing a recent Panamera warm-up limited overs match at the PSE Oval in Noida. It was a really fascinating clash between the stellar stunners and the Speedy Spartan.
And as retired professionals, we are framing this specifically for beginner cricket learners and, student athletes who aspire to play professionally. We really want to peel back the deepest tactical layers of what happened on that pitch.
Which brings us to our central question. Does modern cricket demand relentless, high-risk aggressive batting that dictates the game's tempo from ball one?
Or does long-term, consistent success still rely entirely on traditional defensive play and disciplined bowling execution?
I will be championing the modern aggressive approach as the necessary evolution of the game.
And I will be arguing that traditional defensive fundamentals and disciplined bowling remain the absolute bedrock of consistent victory.
Let's jump right in. My position is that the game has fundamentally evolved past the old paradigms. I mean, if you look at the Speedy Spartans' decisive 7-wicket victory chasing down a very respectable 157 runs in just 15.2 overs, it proves the absolute supremacy of modern, unyielding aggression.
Quick chase, sure, but
it's more than just quick. Look at the sheer dominance at the top of the order. Vikas scored 66 off 37 balls. That is a strike rate of 178. He is scoring nearly 2 runs for every single ball he faces.
Right, the numbers are high.
And Deepak Negi anchored that onslaught with 54 off 35 balls. Together, they put together a massive 102-run partnership off just 58 deliveries. That doesn't just put numbers on the scoreboard, it completely short-circuits the bowler's neurology.
Well,
if you are a student athlete listening to this, understand that attacking the bowler with that level of ferocity forces them to abandon their game plan. It disrupts their muscle memory, alters their lengths, and effectively removes your need to play traditional defensive blocks. Why? Because the bowler is simply too panicked to bowl a genuinely threatening delivery.
I come at it from a different way. We look at a fast-paced run chase and we immediately want to rewrite the coaching manuals. But we are ignoring the underlying mechanics of why that scoring rate was even possible. Aggression is a tool, not a foundation.
But it's a tool that breaks the opponent's foundation entirely.
Flashy strike rates like 178 only occur when the opposition completely lacks basic tactical discipline. I mean, the Speedy Spartans' win wasn't just born of brilliant hitting. It was heavily facilitated by the stellar stunners' catastrophic failure in traditional fundamentals.
You're talking about the first innings.
Exactly. Look at their first innings. They suffered a massive middle-order collapse, losing 5 key wickets for just 16 runs between overs 5.4 and 9.4. That is exactly what happens when you lack defensive solidity. When the ball starts moving or the pressure mounts, you cannot just swing your way out of it. Furthermore, traditional, disciplined bowling remains the ultimate weapon in this sport. Just look at Speedy Spartan's own Arvind Singhal. He bowled 2 overs, gave up only 8 runs, and took 2 crucial wickets.
True, his numbers were good.
Good. That is an economy rate of 4 runs per over in a match where boundaries were flowing freely everywhere else. His tight, foundational bowling dismantled the stunners, proving unconditionally that defense and discipline still win matches.
I am not convinced by that line of reasoning, because it treats modern batting as if it is just, mindless slogging. Let's look at the mechanics of this clash between modern hitting and traditional defense. I want to point our listeners to over 10 of the Speedy Spartan innings.
Ah, the Harry Joshi over.
Right. Vikas is facing Harry Joshi, and he absolutely takes him apart for 18 runs. The sequence of that over is 0, 4, 6, 4, 0, 4. Now, I want to focus on those dot balls, the zeros.
Okay.
When Joshi managed to bowl a good delivery, Vikas didn't retreat into a defensive shell. On the very next delivery, he actively stepped outside his crease to change the pitch of the ball. He turned a good length delivery into a half volley right at his toes and launched it for a boundary.
But you have to look at the geometry of what Harry Joshi was actually bowling there. He wasn't hitting his markers.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. The traditional defensive block is becoming obsolete. It's like a boxer who doesn't just shell up to block punches, but counters simultaneously to keep the opponent off balance.
That is a dangerous analogy for beginners.
But it applies. Vikas didn't block the dot balls and just wait. He immediately hit boundaries on the next delivery. Doesn't this relentless pressure permanently alter a bowler's lengths? By moving his feet, Vikas forces the bowler to start bowling defensively, too wide or too short, just to avoid getting hit.
I think this is a profound misread of the situation, especially for young learners trying to understand the physics of the pitch. Vikas's over against Harry Joshi wasn't a triumph of inevitable modern hitting. It was, frankly, the result of incredibly poor bowling execution.
Joshi went for 34 runs in his 3 overs, yes.
Exactly. He wasn't hitting his lengths, he wasn't setting his fields correctly to protect the boundaries, and he was repeatedly feeding Vikas deliveries right into his natural hitting arc. To tell a student athlete that they can simply aggress their way out of a perfectly executed delivery is dangerous coaching.
But Vikas recognized the poor execution and capitalized on it because his default mindset is to attack.
He did, but contrast that high-wire act with Gaurav Yogi of the Stellar Stunners. Yogi anchored his team's innings with a traditional gritty 34 not-out off 33 balls.
A strike rate of just over 100 in T20, though.
No, his strike rate wasn't going to make the highlight reels, but look at the mechanics of what he did. He played the ball incredibly late, right under his eyes, neutralizing the movement of the ball. He built a foundation. By doing that, he prevented his team from being entirely bowled out after that catastrophic top-order collapse.
I suppose he stabilized things. Sure.
I constantly warn beginner batters about this. If you try to hit your way out of trouble without a defensive foundation, you end up suffering the fate of the Stunners' middle order. Look at Joshi, scoring 1 run off 4 balls, trying to force the issue with a cross-batted heave and getting out softly. Without a defensive technique, you have no structural integrity.
Joshi's failure is exactly why we need to look at what happens immediately after a wicket falls, which transitions us perfectly into examining momentum management under pressure.
A crucial part of the game.
The old rule book says defend and consolidate, but modern cricket completely rejects that. Let's look at the thrilling sequence at the end of over 11 and into over 12. Vikas, after playing this breathtaking innings, is finally caught out brilliantly at long off by Jay.
Off Vipin Kumar's bowling, it was a fantastic piece of fielding and a really crucial breakthrough. Vipin Kumar had finally broken that massive 102-run partnership. He had the momentum.
Exactly. The fielding team is energized, the bowler's tail is up. The traditional textbook dictates that the new batter, Shiv Shankar Das, needs to come in, play a few defensive shots, feel the pace of the pitch, and slowly rebuild.
As he should.
But what actually happens? Das comes to the crease and instantly hits 3 consecutive 4s off Vipin Kumar. Boom, boom, boom. He completely deflates the fielding side in the space of 3 minutes.
Well, it worked that time.
It worked brilliantly. If you are a young batter listening to this, you might think you need to earn the right to attack. But DOS proves the modern tactical mandate. You never, ever let the fielding team sense a shift in game tempo. You instantly transfer the psychological pressure back onto the bowler.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why.
Go ahead.
Viewing DOS's immediate counterattack as a repeatable tactical blueprint is incredibly reckless. It was an unnecessarily high-risk gamble that worked out purely by chance on that specific day.
3 consecutive boundaries isn't chance, it's calculated intent based on field placements.
The intent to swing is real, but the risk profile is astronomical. Let's break down the actual game state. Vipin Kumar had just broken his century stand. If Shiv Shankar Das misjudges the swing by a fraction of a millimeter, if the ball catches the outside edge, the Speedy Spartan is suddenly 112 for 3.
But he didn't miss?
But if he did, they would have 2 brand new batters at the crease, facing a bowler who is suddenly on a hat trick. Das was risking the exact same middle-order collapse that destroyed the stellar stunners. Relying purely on aggression is like driving a Formula One car without brakes.
So you think he should have just blocked?
Traditional defense is the braking system that allows you to navigate the corners. For students learning the game, foundational game awareness means respecting the bowler's good momentum, not gambling the match on ego.
But doesn't Das's success prove that taking the gamble is mathematically worth it if it removes the bowler's momentum entirely? I mean, by hitting those 3-4s, he ensured Vipin Kumar didn't bowl another dangerous delivery all day.
It proves survivorship bias. Just because he survived the gamble doesn't make it the optimal strategy. If you teach young players to swing blindly at their first 3 balls against a bowler who just took a wicket, they will spend a lot of time walking back to the pavilion.
That brings us to a fascinating secondary layer of this exact moment. Since you view Das's success as a gamble that shouldn't have paid off, we have to assess how the fielding captains managed or utterly failed to manage these critical moments of pressure.
On that, we are entirely aligned. The captain is the architect of the fielding team's pressure.
Right, and I have to strongly critique the captaincy of the Stellar Stunners J in this match. He was defending a relatively modest total of 157. Yet he bowled himself for 3 overs, yielding 30 runs, and he allowed Harry Joshi to bowl 3 overs, yielding 34 runs.
Yeah, they gave up 64 runs in 6 overs with 0 wickets between them.
Exactly. Jay completely lost control of the game's tempo by stubbornly sticking to bowlers who were actively being dismantled. Conversely, look at the brilliant fluidity of the Speedy Spartans captain, Farooq Nadeem. When he was in the field, he aggressively rotated 10 different bowlers. 10!
That is a compelling argument, but have you considered that using 10 bowlers is a symptom of chaos rather than a grand strategy?
That's an interesting point, though. I would frame it differently. Nadeem using 10 bowlers isn't chaotic. It's a modern strategy to prevent batters from ever settling into a rhythm. Isn't that constant rotation exactly how you combat aggressive batters?
I currently reject the 10-bowler strategy as a blueprint for students, or for any competitive team for that matter. Let's dig into the actual biomechanics of bowling. A bowler's run-up, gather, and release is a highly complex kinetic chain.
Sure, it takes rhythm.
It takes a bowler at least 6 to 12 deliveries just to calibrate their exact release point to the pitch on that given day. When you look at Nadeem's numbers, 7 of those bowlers bowled exactly 2 overs, and 3 bowled just 1 over.
Which kept the batters guessing.
Memory. This isn't a tactical masterclass. It's a chaotic approach, likely stemming from the fact that this was a warm-up match.
But the scorecard doesn't lie. It worked. The Stunners were restricted to 157.
It worked despite the strategy, not because of it. True captaincy influence comes from trusting your specialist bowlers to execute specific strategies against aggressive batters. We talked about Arvind Singhal earlier. 2 overs, 8 runs, 2 wickets.
And Shivam Kumar.
Yes, Shivam Kumar bowled 1 over, gave up 3 runs, and took a wicket. Why on earth are your most effective disciplined bowlers not completing their full quotas of overs? If Nadeem was truly managing the game effectively, he would have brought Singhal and Kumar back to bowl their maximum allowed overs to genuinely strangle the opposition.
But keeping part-timers out of the attack entirely makes your primary bowlers predictable. By the 3rd over of a continuous spell, a modern batter has calibrated the bowler's pace perfectly. They know exactly when the ball is going to reach them.
Not if the bowler has fundamental discipline. A perfectly executed Yorker right at the batter's toes is mathematically impossible to hit for a 6, whether it's the first ball of the spell or the 20th. The physics of the game don't change just because a batter has seen you bowl a few times.
We will have to fundamentally disagree on the value of that disruption. Modern batters are just too good at neutralizing predictable excellence. But as we look at the whole picture of this match, it reinforces my core belief.
Which is?
The game has fundamentally shifted. The Speedy Spartans' ability to chase 157 in just over 15 overs by weaponizing aggression, by constantly pressing the attack, is the absolute blueprint for modern success. For student athletes listening, the takeaway is that you cannot wait for the game to come to you. You have to dictate the terms of engagement, or you will be left behind.
And while I acknowledge the spectacular nature of that chase, I maintain that aggression is merely the roof of the house. traditional defensive play, and disciplined bowling, as briefly shown by Arvind Singhal and Gaurav Yogi, remain the vital foundation.
Even in T20s?
Especially in limited overs. Without that foundation, without the physical technique to survive a good spell of bowling, teams will inevitably collapse like the Stellar Stunners did. You cannot build a long-term professional career on high-risk gambles alone.
Which is exactly why analyzing these matches at the microscopic level is so incredibly valuable. For our audience, observing these contrasting styles reveals the immense complexity of cricket. The tension between risk-taking and risk mitigation is where the true beauty of the sport lies.
It really is a constant recalibration, and understanding both sides of that coin is what separates the amateurs from the professionals.
Precisely. There is far more to unpack in how individual matchups dictate these macro strategies. But we will leave it there for today without declaring a definitive winner. We'll leave it to you, the listener, to decide which philosophy you would adopt on the pitch. Thank you for joining us.